Okay. Good morning, everybody. Parshat Tazria.
I appreciate your standard time.
Okay, so Shmini last week. So we went through Kashrut. Right, we went through the dedication of the Mishkan and Kashrut.
Rabbi, Yossi had Tazria and Torah.
And my son, that's a horrible story. Rabbi Berkovitz was studying for his bar mitzvah, they were Jewish remote, and then they found one every God knows how many years. Chabad, then Chabad was the only one around. Were doing Tazria Metzorah instead. Nobody else did it. So 3 days before his bar mitzvah, I took him out of school, I let him study.
Wow.
And that's a horrible story.
Wow. Okay, so Yafi had said that she wanted me to touch upon Datan va'Avira.
Although I read the Shabbat thing, and it was.
Okay.
I read something really nice about it.
With English translation.
Okay. Datan and Aviram were the sons of Aaron, that on the day of the dedication of the Mishkan, they brought their own. I'm sorry, Nadav and Avihu. I'm sorry. Yes, Nadav and Avihu. Right, they brought a fire offering that they were not commanded, and they died right there. And last year we spent a lot of time on it. Just very briefly, the approach, which is maybe not everyone will like this approach, right? But when it comes to Torah, when it comes to God, when it comes to the Mishkan which is God's house, so it was crucially important that it be made absolutely clear that this is not this freestyle expression of whatever works for me as in terms of spirituality. Right? This is going into literally the Kodesh Kadashim, literally going into the Holy of Holies. Right? Let's say you go to someone's house. You understand, right? Let's say a person likes to pepper their speech with different expletives. Let's say, right? It's poetic license, it's for emphasis, right? That's how they like to speak. But one understands that you go into someone else's house who might not appreciate that colorful aspect of the language. So you understand that in their house, that's not how you're going to speak. And if they ask you to speak at their daughter's wedding, you certainly understand that that's not how, right? As you get closer and closer into a person's inner private space, you understand that you might like to do certain things a certain way, great. But as you're going into their intimate inner space, you understand that you show deference to that which is important to them. And when it came to entering on the day that we are consecrating the Mishkan, which is God, so to speak, abode here on this earth, that is not a time for you to say, well, I think it'll be very nice if we do. No. Over there you do. God gave a formula for spirituality. There you follow that formula. And this is something that reverberates throughout time. Right? Is it a free expression of that which is meaningful to me? Or do I need to find meaning in the pathways that God has given to us as means of approaching and accessing Him? And this was a lesson that needed to have been, it's not a lesson that had to be taught. If on the very first day there are those who were of the most holy who said, well, let's present a whole different approach, that we can just do whatever would seem to be a meaningful service to us, so then it needs to be made very clear that spirituality is not a free-for-all.
But this was not the kavanah.
I'm sorry?
Their kavanah was not to express a different spirituality.
What else was the Eish Zara?
I think it was like helping or doing it faster or something.
It was a different.
It wasn't like a different.
It was. Eish Zara means that.
Spirituality. Obviously, they were in the Holy of Holiness, and I don't think they had any kind of kavanah to change something. Or
I'm not saying it was a kavanah ra'ah. Right? They probably, I think already Sachs discussed it as this unbridled expression of love, that this is my free love expression.
Might be.
Right. But that is going outside of the parameters of the instructions of what's meant to be done there.
I don't think they deserve the punishment because they did something obviously they did wrong. But to kill them in front of their parents and Moshe, it's too harsh. And if God is El Rachum v'Chanun, Chemale, Chesed, it doesn't go together. It's not. It's like, hello.
I read something.
So to that, I would just say, Yafi, what we say at the end of davening every day, Bayom Ahu Yeh Hashem Echad U'Shmo Echad. There are lots of things that go on in this world that we look around and say, is this compassion? Is this Kel Rachum V'Chanun, Erech Apayim V'Rav Chesed? Emet? Maybe. But is this all the other? And we are exposed to a tremendous amount that causes pause to all sensitive thinking people. And that is where our emunah comes in. And that's what we say in the end of, that's where our faith comes in. That's what we say at the end of davening, right? Bayom Ahu, on that day, Hashem's name will be one, Hashem will be Echad, and His name, God will be one, and His name will be one. Ultimately, we'll understand the kindness and generosity and all that took place. But over here, we don't. And Moshe didn't. And Moshe asked, Lama harayot lama, said, why have you done bad? And Avram, actually, one of the things that we learned from Avram and the whole Sodom and Amorah, Sodom and Gomorrah, is that Avram, God said, I'm going to see what I'm going to do about Sodom and Amorah, inviting Avraham's involvement. Right? He could have said, and perhaps he should have said, we might have thought he should have said, listen, you're God, you know, what can I possibly add to this conversation? Right? Do whatever you see fit. But God wants us to get involved and try to not see the world through God's eyes, but to see the world through our own eyes, through our human eyes. And therefore, No, wait. Right? We're supposed to view the world through our eyes and see where are areas that we can contribute to, that we can make better. We don't say this person's poor. Well, God made him poor. God doesn't want him to have. Who am I to get involved? That's God's eyes. We don't view the world through God's eyes. We say, oh, what can I do to help this person? Right? There's a sickness. We don't say, well, God made the sickness, let God fix the sickness. Who am I to discover a cure? That's God's eyes. We don't look at it through God's eyes, we look at it through our eyes, and we say, what can I do l'takein olam v'malchut shaddai, to make this world better? What can I do to improve things? That's our eyes. But when it comes to serving God in the Holy of Holies, there it's not for you to say, oh, I can do it better. When it comes to helping you, yes, what can I do? When it comes to serving God in the Holy of Holies, that's not the time for me to say, well, I think it would be better this way. I think I could add a little bit of spice to the avoda and bring in this eish zara, this foreign fire burning whatever incense it was, right? That's not the time for our human intervention. There, we're entering the Holy of Holies to serve God. There, the service is what you are commanded to do. You're entering into my most intimate space. Now it's not the time for I think. No, it's not what you think. This is the way the service should be done. There's a difference between me serving God in the Holy of Holies and my looking around and seeing human needs and saying, what can I do to improve it?
Can I say something that I heard about it? Like Rashi, I say קשה לי הדבר. It's very hard for me to accept. The God that forgave Aaron on Chet HaEgel and everything, let him give korban and blah, blah, blah. I heard something Friday, I'm listening, a program, that the first one that I thought was connected to your speech on Shabbat, it is the only one I said, why is it Es Zara? Why? If you read the text said each of them took his own machtoret and brought their own offering. It specifies Aaron did it for everybody. It was the first time. And they did each their own. Remember you gave the speech, we should be together. And if you think why Beit HaMikdash was, because people were fighting, the Torah itself explained how could it be Ezra. It said, ויקחו איש מחתתו, ויקריבו את עולתם or something, I don't remember by heart. I used to have better memory.
איש מחתתו ויביאו בהן אש וישימו על הקטורת ויקראו לפני השם אש זרה אשר לא ציווה אותם.
The Torah explained why was it Ezra. They did not, God didn't want you to come and do your own thing in this way. It was the first time. It was for everybody. That the only explanation that I think was worth it killing, because it was horrible. Even Aaron, Vayedom Aaron, couldn't do.
Right.
But they used this time for everybody, and this was their time to show, it's mine, I'm doing it. Ish מחתתו ויקריבו איש את שלו.
Very nice.
And I think that's the only one I can explain, because what you say, I cannot explain, I cannot accept.
Okay, it's a very nice point.
Yeah. Anyway, I thought I should.
Let's come back to Tazria. Okay, Tazria starts off, we discussed this before, so I don't know if we should go into it again. Right, we discussed before, Tazria begins with the status of a woman after having given birth. Okay? So, let me do this relatively quickly. Okay? And then we'll move on to the rest of Tazria. Okay? Tazria is Zera is the seed. Okay? So Isha ki Tazria, here when a woman conceives is how it's defined. So let's just get started. Let's go a little bit. Someone take for us in Hebrew, please. Marta, b'makasha.
וידבר השם על משה לאמור, דבר אל בני ישראל לאמור.
אישה
כי תזריע וילדה זכר וטמאה 7 ימים כמי נידה דותה תזריע.
Titma. Good. Okay. And someone jump ahead to verse 5 in Hebrew. Ve'im nekeva teled.
ואם נקבה תלך וטמאה שבועיים כנידתה 60 יום ו6 ימים תשב על בני טהרה.
Okay. In English, please, someone take verses 1, 2, and 5. Or 1, 2, 3, and then 5.
Hashem spoke to Moses, saying, "Speak to the children of Israel, saying, when a woman conceives and gives birth to a male, she shall be contaminated for a 7-day period, as during the days of her separation, infirmity shall be shall she be contaminated.
He said, I don't like the word contaminated. Right? To me, it sounds like the cooties. Right? So, Tume'ah means spiritually or ritually impure. Okay? And then, let's go a little bit. On the 8th day?
On the 8th day, the flesh of his foreskin will be circumcised.
Okay.
And then you want 5.
Good.
Okay, let me find it. If she gives birth to a female, she shall be kept impure for 2 weeks, as during her separation, and for 66 days she shall remain in blood of purity.
Okay. So we have this tum'ah, this impurity, this ritual impurity after giving birth. And this is something that raises the ire of 50.1% of the population, right? Right? Because why in the world, right? What is more beautiful than giving birth? What is more holy than giving birth to a child?
Oh, I thought you talked about the girl or boy.
Right?
No,
so why should there be impurity? Right? Even if we're not going to say contaminated, right? But why should there be this ritual impurity after the birth of a child? And to add insult to injury, why should this length, the duration of this impurity, be twice as long after the birth of a girl, that's 2 weeks, and after the birth of a boy, it's only 1 week? Yes.
I think I remember what you said about this.
So let me build it up. Okay? So we have a basic misunderstanding about tum'ah, about impurity. For example, when an animal dies, it does not cause much impurity when one comes in contact with it. When a human being dies, there is a great heightened degree of impurity that is associated with it. And when a Jewish person dies, there is an even greater degree of impurity that is associated with the body. So we see right away that our understanding of that we need to gain an understanding of what is this tum'ah, what is this impurity that the Torah speaks about in different situations. Right? We're going to have the Parsha after this first very beginning is going to be speaking mostly about tzara'at. Tzara'at is I don't want to call it leprosy because it's not leprosy. Tzara'at is this sores on the body, which we'll soon see is a physical manifestation of a spiritual ailment that was only in Israel, only during a period of time, and we don't have nowadays. Yes, Maria?
Why is the difference in impurity between the animal?
So let's understand this. What is the difference?
Yeah. Why?
Why? Okay. I mean, the actual difference is that by a nevela, one would have tumah just for 1 day, right? Whereas of an animal, a human body causes tumah of 7 days, and then you need the whole red heifer process to purify the person. Right now, we're all tamei mate, and if it's a dead body, if one comes in contact or one carries, there is tumah, but being under the same roof will only spread this tumah if it is a Jewish person. A non-Jewish person, we don't have that. So clearly, we need to have a whole revamping of our understanding of what is this tumah and what causes this tumah.
I still don't understand who made this distinction.
The Torah,
Oh,
psukim,
but
psukim.
what caused them to think that way?
So let me offer an explanation, okay, without spending the whole time on this. Everything that exists has its potential for spirituality. That is why it exists. If there is no connection to spirituality, then it would not exist. Everything has its potential for spirituality. The Gemara describes this as everything has its malach, its angel, or its spiritual connection, spiritual power source that allows it to exist. When there is this kedusha, this holiness, and that holiness or potential holiness is no longer there, the result is tum'ah, is impurity. Why? Because if it no longer has its potential for holiness, then it's no longer serving its purpose. It no longer has that purpose to serve. And therefore, it is now impure, even contaminated. The potential that it had is no longer there. So there is this, so to speak, vacuum. That vacuum is filled with this impurity. The degree, the amount of holiness potential that it had, that is the degree of the tum'ah, of the impurity that will, so to speak, fill this void, and that will determine the degree of its impurity. An animal has very limited ability for kedusha, for holiness. But when it's alive, it has a certain degree of that. Once it dies, that void is created. That void is filled with tumah, and there is a lesser degree of tumah, of impurity. A human being has a tremendous degree of potential holiness. We are called Bnei Adam. We are called mankind. Adam is either because of the Adamah, the earth that we come from. Adamah, and the Maharal explains that just like earth is transformed and can grow and can help form this massive tree and wonderful sweet fruit, so too we have the ability of transformation. That is who we are, that's what we are. Once a person dies, the person no longer has that ability. Therefore, the body, which is now this garment that has been almost discarded, that is no longer able to serve its function, that now has this impurity. The neshama, the soul that was in it, left. Now what is left is this tum'ah, this impurity. Is this...
Very quickly, kind of contradictory, the animals that are offered in the Beis Hamikdash become holy.
Okay, that is correct. An animal, if it's brought as a sacrifice, and then it goes onto the altar, right? If it's fully maximized its spiritual potential, correct. Now, so it's not this contamination, it's not the cooties. On the contrary, it's when there is this ability to transcend, which no longer can, then what sets in, what fills that void, is this tum'ah. Now, a woman, after she has her period, or during the time of her period, the woman has tum'ah, has impurity. Why? Why should nida cause impurity? Well, what is happening on a biological level? A woman is preparing for childbirth, and the uterine wall is thickening with a blood supply in order to support this life. And once that potential for life has passed, and there will not be a fertilization during that period of time, so then what happens? The body sheds that added buildup, and that is the menstrual bleeding that takes place. So really, what is menstruation? It is the loss of potential life, the loss of potential kedusha, potential holiness. When there is a potential of holiness and that potential is lost, there is the void that is formed. That void is filled with the antithesis, the opposite of the holiness, the Torah, the purity that could have been, and the antithesis of that is the tum'ah, is the impurity. Okay, so that works when it comes to the death of a living creature on the different levels. And we understand that a menstrual period is the loss of potential life. But childbirth is not the loss. Childbirth is the fulfillment. It's the epitome of the fulfillment. It is the creation of Kedusha, of life. It is the creation of another human being and another neshama, another soul that is being sent from the heavens for its earthly mission, its earthly task. So why is it that there will be impurity, that there will be tumah after childbirth? So along the same lines, we have potential to be tahor, to be kadosh, to be holy, to be pure. And all of the mitzvot that we have, all of the commandments that we have, are all meant to transform us. The blessing we make before every mitzvah, before you light candles Friday night, is Asher Kiddishanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu. Kiddishanu means you have sanctified us. You have made us holy with your mitzvot. Every mitzvah that we do, whether it is bein adam lechaveiro, between man and man, or between adam lemakom, between man and God, it is meant to transform us, to make us different, to make us more godly. That is what every mitzvah is meant to do. The goal is to make us as godly as we can humanly become. Now, if we were to describe what is unique about God, we would have a list. What would be on that list of things that are unique about God? All-knowing, all-powerful, eternal, creator. Right? Our short list would have to include in it, right, all-knowing, all-powerful, eternal, creator. Can we ever become all-knowing? No. We can spend a life studying and trying to gain more and more knowledge, more and more Torah knowledge, So we try to become as close as we can to that. Okay? Eternal, we have no control over how long. Oh, we do. We're supposed to stay healthy. We're supposed to eat well. In a physical eating, we discussed last week. Spiritual eating, we're supposed to stay healthy in terms of exercise. We're supposed to be careful wardens of this physical body that was given to us in order that we can get the most mileage out of it and accomplish the most that we can during our lifetime here. When it comes to Creator, when is the point when a person, when a human being comes as close to being a creator as is humanly possible? That time is at the time of childbirth. Right? Now also keep in mind, I go back a step, a man also becomes tamei when a man emits his zera, his seed. Why? Because the time of the man emitting his seed, that's the time that he is creating to the very, very minimal amount compared to the woman's creation that the man does. But that is his apex, and then after that, he's no longer creating, he becomes tamei. A woman at childbirth is as close to being a creator as is humanly possible, with all the range of human experiences. That is as close as a person gets. At the time of childbirth, a woman has this intense kedusha of being a creator. The child is born. At that point, what happens? She once again becomes a mere mortal. She is no longer at that level of being a creator. What sets in? There is this impurity that sets in. And Chiddushei Harim points out that after giving birth to a girl, what has she done? She has created a potential creator. And therefore the Kedusha is that much greater, that much more intense, and the result afterwards will be a tumah not of a mere 7 days, but of a 14-day duration. So the question that we had was based on the misunderstanding that tumah is dirty, tumah is crass, tumah is lowly, and on the contrary, tumah is an indication of a level of kedusha that existed beforehand. The woman who reaches this higher level of kedusha has this greater degree of tumah that follows afterwards.
Rabbi, so the mitzvot are like pushing against the tumah. The more mitzvot, the more push away the tumah.
I think it's really actually somewhat different orbits, though.
Does it?
Yeah.
So in conjunction with this, if this is such a holy aspect and area, this whole emergence of the creation, then why for Gan Eden did Hashem couch it in terms of lowering of spirituality that
I'm not sure what were you referring to?
Children with pain and all that, and you will be subservient to your husband and all that sort of thing. Why is there this juxtaposition? You know?
That's not. That's not. I don't know if that's relating to tumah at all, is it?
Well, but
you're asking a general question.
Well, but there's sort of contrast.
Why was there going to be? Why together with childbirth was? Why together with childbirth was there this aspect? Well, I got it. I got it. Okay, so it's an interesting question, and perhaps perhaps, we discussed last week when we were discussing about how the uniqueness of the laws of kashrut, right? So we say what's very unique about the mitzvah of kosher is, number one, because that is a mitzvah that you literally wear. It becomes you are literally what you eat. And we also said because that links back to the original sin, which was through eating. So perhaps we could say that the chait, the sin in the Garden of Eden was God said you can do everything, but you can't do this, which means I'm the boss, I'm the creator, and they're wanting to have no parameters, no restrictions. That means that I'm the boss. It's my place. I'm the creator. So perhaps because of that, there needed to be, right? Mankind creates with our planting. That's our creating. So we need to know that we don't control that. And therefore there will be the thorns and the ze'at apecha tochal lechem, with the sweat of the brow for Adam's creation. And Chava's creation, woman's creation, also there needed to be this understanding that you're not the one who's the creator. And there will be this the itzavon, there will be this difficulty that will accompany it, perhaps.
In religious families, Jewish and otherwise, they have a lot of children. Therefore, the woman goes through this process of creation tumah. Does it make a difference if you have 12 children, you have no children, or that kind of thing? Does it make a difference? You've had this experience repeatedly.
Does it make a difference in terms, does it affect the laws? The neshama, I imagine it does, but I imagine it does. But yeah, I would imagine.
It just seems like you've touched on creativity, creation, a lot.
That is correct. Let's go on a little bit, because I do want to touch upon the mitzorah, right? The Tazria and the tzarat. So the tzarat, again, is these bodily lesions. First of all, it affects not just the body. It would affect the house. It would affect garments. But it only affect white garments. Right? It wasn't me doing the laundry. Right? It would only affect white garments. Right? If there was this color spillage, right, on a colored garment, that would not be tzarat. Right? This was clearly something beyond the natural. Then it would affect the body. Now, there is the proverbial, a bolt of lightning is going to come down and strike. Right? There's that proverbial, there was no bolt of lightning. Right? Which means God doesn't clearly involve himself in bolts of lightning hitting the bad people and the good people living a wonderful, comfortable, idyllic life, right? Even I mentioned before, even Moshe, right, by our Sinai, when he asked Hashem, Harini na et kvodecha, show me your honor, the Talmud explains that Moshe was asking why is it of Rasha v'tovlo, tzaddik v'ralo, that which bothers most thinking people. Why do righteous suffer? Why do the evil prosper? Etc., etc. So we don't live in a world where there is this proverbial bolt of lightning which comes down and strikes the evil doers. Yet, there is one place, there is one aveira, one sin, where we have this bolt of lightning. What is that? This tzarat. which our sages teach us comes from Lashon Hara. That comes from speaking. Lashon Hara is defined as true derogatory information that is conveyed. Doesn't need to be spoken. It could be written. It could be hinted at. It could be just a roll of the eye, or right. There are ways to convey it without speaking, without writing. The most common justification is it's not Lashon Hara because it's true. Now, of course, it is Lashon Hara because it's true. Lashon Hara is defined as true derogatory information. If it's not true, it has a different name. It's called Motzi Shem Ra, which actually is almost Mitzorah, is Motzi Ra, right? It's giving out bad. Motzi Shem Ra is producing a bad name. It's not conveying true derogatory information. It's motzi. It is producing. It is concocting it. It is creating it. So the question then needs to be, with all of the aveirot, with all of the sins, for breaking Shabbat, we don't find this lightning bolt of the skin erupting. For murder, we don't find this. For idolatry, we don't find this. Why would we find this specifically when it comes to speaking derogatorily about others? Why would we find this specifically by Lashon Hara? Linda.
Because that disturbs all the commandments that are man to man versus, Hashem can kind of take care of himself, if you would.
Okay.
Speech is very powerful.
Okay, 1 second. Okay, so Linda wants to say that speech is, or conveying of information, right, is the main vehicle of our person-to-person interactions. Right? And I would just add in that we find that when it's between man and God, God's willing to wait. When it's between man and man, God is not willing to wait. Right? The Dor HaFlaga, the generation that built the tower against God, what happened to them? Their languages were mixed up and they were scattered about. Right? So they're fighting against God, they get scattered about. The generation of the flood, where V'timalei haaretz chamas, that the land was filled with thievery, what happened to them? They were destroyed. So we find that the repercussion of between man and man is much greater and much faster than when it comes to areas between man and God. Very nice. Rachel?
Speech is very powerful. You can kill more people with a word than with it.
Okay, that's right.
Destroy lives.
Okay. Speech to a certain degree gives us, we're talking about godly powers. Speech is something, there's just a certain amount of people that I can physically affect. Speech is something that gives us this power that goes far beyond, far beyond, right? And speech can be used for tremendous good, and it has the power to be used for tremendous harm, tremendous evil. So speech is almost a superpower that is given to us, and therefore, because it is so powerful, so therefore it needs to have these added safeguards on it. Right? That's very, very interesting. Yes?
Somehow I thought about it that if you kill a person, there are all kind of laws, you get punished. But if you shame a person, it's according to Judaism, you shafach damo, you killed him. But that's something that you many times are not aware of, because you think you did a good thing, you told the truth, and other people maybe are not aware of it, and here God steps in, and you are being punished physically, like for spiritual thing,
Okay,
and that's maybe the only time of the tzarat, there's something God will step in to punish you, or to make sure everybody will know,
That's very
or
interesting.
something that not know, and that's connected
That's
to...
a very nice idea, right? Speech is something that we can do it in a very, very hushed manner. No one else needs to know, right? You say it very quietly, right? And it's something that we think, right, is being done without it being known, right? But the effects are incredible, devastating, right? So perhaps that's why Hashem, right, comes along and creates a structure that which you did in a concealed manner, the repercussion is one that's going to be openly revealed for everyone. Because the laws of this is that a person, right, they're very unique laws that accompany this. The person is sent outside of the machane, outside of the camp, okay? Which in effect is saying, if you don't know how to properly utilize the gift and the opportunity of social interaction, you will not be allowed to have any social interaction. It's a privilege. And if you're going to abuse that privilege, then it will be taken away from you. Another very strange aspect of tzarat is that the Kohen has to come and inspect it. And based on what the Kohen pronounces, that is the status of the person. Now, what's very strange, though, is that even though it was on the wall, it was on the garment, it was on the body, well before the Kohen came and inspected it and issued his verdict of what it is, the impurity only sets in from that moment. Whatever is in the house, when the Kohen says it's tameh, will become tameh, impure. Whatever was taken out of the house 5 minutes before the Kohen got there, even though whatever's on the wall that he's inspecting hasn't changed at all, that will not become tameh. What is the point at what point in time does the tumah come into effect? When the Kohen says it. Because a person who speaks badly about others will often justify, rationalize, and say, what did I do? I just said a few words. I just said something. I didn't do anything. I just spoke. And the person needs to realize, to recognize that you did the power of words, the power of speech. Beautiful. Yes?
And analogously to the childbirth and increasing and then loss of Kedusha situation, even though it's metaphorical probably for us to understand, Hashem created by speaking, by Yomer Hashem.
Okay, very nice. Yes.
So if we create inappropriately, we're having a loss of Kedusha.
Okay. Right? The verses in discussing creation says, and God said, let there be light. Who did he say it to? There was no one to say it to. But what does it mean? It means God willed there to be light, and there was light. So then the question then is, so why did the Torah describe it as God said? Why did it say God willed? And I believe, Ramban perhaps, well, the commentators explain that it's teaching us that speech, words, have the ability to create and they have the ability to destroy. Okay?
At my shiva for my son, we had a lot of people and I was grateful. But 6 people came and their speech was terrible. I was extremely upset to this very day.
Terrible in what way?
They were hurtful speech. It was hurtful speech. They each had different things they were talking about. Irrelevant speech, hurtful speech, things that annoy, that they weren't. You're supposed to come to a shiva and not talk and just make the person sitting there sort of comfortable.
Correct.
But they just came and talked about anything. The news, what's happening in the news, the terrible things that are in the news, or various things. What I'm saying is, I'm trying to say that most people, a lot of people have no clue what they...
Ignorance.
Ignorance, what they are saying and when they're saying it. And these are people, Jews.
Yep.
And it just seems to me, and I feel, I may be one of them myself. So I have to be very careful because I see the damage that is done. It's still there. It's still bugging me when I see these people,
Right.
and it was hurtful,
the
very hurtful.
Yeah, yeah. Everyone just turn to page 10 for a moment. By the creation of mankind, right? Verse 7. Vayitzar Hashem Elokim et Adam. Right? In English, page 11, it's in verse 7. And God formed Adam, mankind, afar min Adama, right? Dust from the earth. Vayipach ba'apav nishmat chayim, and he blew into his nostrils a soul of life. Vayhi Adam lenefesh chaya, and man became a living being. Those who can follow in Hebrew, over here we have the Chumash, here we have the Aramaic translation, the Targum. And if you take a look on the third to last line in the Aramaic, Va'avat ba'adam l'ruach memalala. Mankind became, he explains, a nefesh chaya, a living being, as a speaking being. And very interesting, we have 4 different categories of creation of things in existence. We have the domain, the inanimate. We have the someach, that which grows. We have chai, which is considered living, and then we have midaber, which is the speakers, mankind.
Could you say those again?
Yes. Domain, which is inanimate. Some like rock. Someach, growing, like plant life. Chai, living, animal kingdom. Midaber, speaking, mankind.
Thank you.
Now what's very interesting is the domain, the rock. No matter what happens to it, the rock stays a rock. Okay? Yes, it has a purpose. Now, tzomeach, that which is growing, that goes beyond the rock. But what happens when you cut it? When you cut it from its source, what happens to it? It dies. It becomes less than the domain. It goes lower than that which it started off greater than. It started off above the rock. Once you remove from it that which makes it greater, it doesn't then go down to the level beneath it. It goes down beneath that. It completely dead, and it will completely just disintegrate. Now, let's go to a chai, something that is living. Okay? That is the third level up. Now, what happens to it when it dies?
Disintegrates and goes.
Right? Not only does it disintegrate like the tzomeach, like the plant, but it starts to rot.
Right, it rots.
Right? It rots. It has a stench to it. It becomes worse than the tzomeach and worse, lower than the domain, the inanimate. A human being. What makes us greater? Speech. We are a medaber. If we abuse, cut ourselves off from that life source of a medaber, if we abuse that which makes us greater, then that brings us down lower and lower and lower, and we have this, the whole body starts to erupt. The whole body starts to almost to decompose. So we have these different levels of what brings each category up, and when we take away that aspect, we become even lower and lower and lower. Perhaps, coming back just to add on to the many good answers that were given, the reason why there is the lightning bolt, specifically by this is what makes us uniquely human. This is what brings us up above the rest of the other levels of creation. If we are abusing that, then we are abusing that which is our very glory, our very essence. And therefore there needed to be this very clear lightning bolt. There needs to be this very clear message that you are veering off into a very dangerous way. Just a famous mashal, just to keep in mind, of story, mashal, I'm not sure, a parable or story, I'm not sure if it's a true story, if it's just of a person who had spoken very badly about others and felt very, very bad about it. It caused a lot of harm. They felt terrible about it. They went to the rabbi and said, what can I do? What can I do? So the rabbi said, take a down pillow, go on top of the high hill over there we have in our village, cut it, and shake out all of the feathers. Oh, that's pretty easy. He goes ahead and does that, comes back down to the rabbi and said, done. He said, oh, no. Now go and gather the feathers. Okay? And something that I say often, before you say it, you own it. After you say it, it owns you.
Wow.
Right? Be really careful. Right?
Impossible.
Huh? Not impossible. Challenging. Challenging. But not impossible. And that's if we're having a disagreement with someone, a spouse or someone, be careful what you say. Right? Careful what you say. Because once you say it, you can't unsay it. The person will understand it was in the heat of the moment, but it can never be fully unsaid. And something that we say to someone else, about someone else, we have to be so careful, because once it's said, it takes on. Look, we certainly see this in our social media world that we live. Right? Once something is posted, it can't come off. It can't come. You can't get it off the internet. Right? You might not be spreading. You're not spreading it further, but it can't come off. And that is a very powerful lesson to us. That there is a certain reality that is created that can't be undone. But a mistake that many people have is, and I know where the mistake comes from, but it's a terrible mistake. And they say that you're not allowed to speak about anyone else, not good or not bad. Right? And that is a terrible mistake. Now it comes from, there is a halacha that one should not overdo the praises of someone, right? Or even not overdoing, don't praise someone in front of someone who you know feels negatively towards that person, because you're clearly, if you overdo it, you're pushing people's buttons, they're going to say, well, let's not get carried away. I've seen this person do X, Y, and Z. So your speech is going to lead towards, is going to initiate other Lashon Hara to be spoken. But in general, there needs to be Lishna Tova. There needs to be Lashon Tov. We're not allowed to speak Lashon Hara, and we should speak Lashon Tov. Right? We need to teach ourselves to speak positively, to speak well about others, about situations. And really, that is how we change our view of the world. I always say you could have two people living in the same exact situation, and one person is living in hell, the other person is living in heaven. It all depends what is the person focusing on. And there's always good in everyone's life, and there's always difficulties and challenges in everyone's life. And we decide what do we focus on, what world are we living in, and that is determined to a great degree by what we decide to speak about. Because after our speech, that is where our feelings and our attention is drawn. Yes?
So when you said not good or bad, I always learned no third-party conversations because you may not have...
Say it again?
No third-party references because you may not have all the facts, you may not have all the information, and therefore you may still pre-color someone else's impression of the situation.
I wouldn't say no third party. I would say nothing. To speak well about others is a good thing to do.
Here's an example. How's so-and-so? I think so-and-so as well.
Look,
can I finish? And it's exceptionally well. In fact, so-and-so is pregnant. You know, mazel tov, that's a nice thing. But what if so-and-so, and so-and-so never asked you to keep it in confidence, and it has been telling people, but it's not necessarily your information to disseminate. So-and-so...
Granted, so a person needs to use discretion over what they say about others. Yeah, Linda.
That we don't really realize the strength of our own words in terms of the other three modalities, if you will. If we speak badly around water and then freeze it, the crystals look completely different than if we speak nicely around that water.
Okay.
We know plants also show an effect depending on if a person enters the room who hates plants, they tested it and the plant feels a difference.
Interesting.
And we know that if you speak badly to animals.
I try to hug as many trees
I
as
don't
I
know.
can.
I go to my dog and I say, stupid, stupid. He loves it.
I read somewhere.
Yeah, so the words mean nothing.
Yes.
And then
I was receiving all these emails about Lashon Hora, what's considered to be Lashon Hora, what's not.
Right.
And actually, speaking good about something else also
Right.
to be careful because, okay. But there is another thing is when a person says Lashon Hora, again, it's not, I just read it somewhere, he closes the channels or the channels through which his praise reaching the Creator are
Okay.
closed.
That's a very valid point, right? You know, a person, we're using the same vessel
Yeah.
for tefillah, right? For prayer that we use for. So we want to make sure that the vessel. When I was running a boys' sleepaway camp in Israel, so sometimes little boys, they think it's macho to have a foul mouth, and they think that's cool. So I gave them a parable, right? I said, you daven so beautifully. You daven so beautifully. I said, imagine a person I said, every word of your prayer is a gem. It's a gem that goes onto God's crown. I said, but imagine a person who has the most beautiful gem, and they want to present it to the king, and they bring it to the king in a toilet bowl. No matter how beautiful that gem is, the king is not going to accept that gem, and it'll be off with his head. So I said, you have to be so careful that our mouth that we use to give these gems to the king, to God through our prayers, so careful that it should not be a toilet bowl with the other way that we use that. Dove, and then I'll take other questions. I don't want to hold everyone.
So it's very interesting that the walls somewhere record something that was said.
Yeah.
So isn't it interesting at some point, Sarat on the wall, that wall, and take it in, knock it down.
Yeah, that is correct. Yeah.
So getting back to the earlier cases of Tameh.
Aaron needs to go. It's late already. Okay.
How do the sages know that since there's no Beit HaMikdash, that now mikveh is an appropriate way to recover or clear the Tameh out of that void versus the sacrifice?
It did not do with the Beis HaMikdash. The Torah gives very clear process of becoming tahor, and for tamei mate, it's only through the red heifer.
But for the other, she shall bring a sheep within its first year, or a young dove, or a turtle dove.
Correct. So we can't bring that. So we don't bring that.
How is now a mikveh known to be?
The mikvah is not helping in terms of the tuma and tahara, in terms of a korban. It's helping in terms of the mikvah that we nowadays helps in terms of the prohibited or permitted or mitzvah relationship between husband and a wife.
Oh, only?
Yeah.
So there's no way we're getting rid of the tameh from
Cheryl,
childbirth?
In those cases, it involved mikvah and then involved the korban. Without the korban, it's not completed.
I see.
Yeah. Okay.
thank you very much. That was wonderful.
We'll call it over here, everybody. A good day.
Rabbi,
You want to talk, Talia?
Yes, wasn't mistaken through my hand if you read that book by some